When I was 16, I knew I wanted to get into medical school, but it seemed like an impossible task. There are endless exams, tests, and interviews, and it's not just that you have to pass these, it's that you have to score better than all of the other people trying to get into medical school as well. I always thought that I'd have to put in a huge amount of effort, but what I found instead was that it was the small habits, the 1% improvements every day that actually helped me achieve my dream. My name's Emil and I'm a second year medical student studying in Melbourne, Australia. And in this video, I'll share the 3 habits that I think helped me achieve my dream of getting into medical school. The first of which is getting into the habit of being a doer. When you're applying your skills in any subject, it's really nice and natural to plan to try and get things perfect the first time. Regardless of what it is, whether it's writing an English essay, doing a practice exam for the first time, or applying your understanding in just a chemistry question for homework, it's easy to plan and always feel like you're not ready to start these important tasks. I know a lot of people who stop themselves from starting and make excuses like, oh, I don't actually know my chemistry well enough to apply it to this question, or I don't know the best quotes for this English essay, so I shouldn't get started with the essay, or I don't know all of the topics on this exam, so maybe I should start it after I learn all the topics. To have all of these questions and to feel this discomfort is completely natural, but I think that when you do this, you become a habitual planner, and even if you had 3 weeks to do an English essay, you might spend 2.5 weeks planning and only start it 3 days before the essay is due. What I found is that even though it might be tempting to always try and predict your mistakes and prevent them from happening, it's far better to just throw that out of the window, just do it and make the mistakes yourself. The problem with planning for your mistakes is that the number of mistakes you can make is always going to be infinite. Even if you found the perfect quotes to put into your English essay, you might then think, oh, but what themes am I going to talk about in this essay? Or I shouldn't start writing this essay until I know exactly what I'm going to write in every moment of the piece. Regardless of what it is that you're doing or what you're studying, if you're a habitual planner, you'll always have an infinite amount of questions and an infinite amount of mistakes that you want to avoid that stop you from just starting and doing the thing. It took me a long time, but instead of planning endlessly, I tried my best to become a habitual doer. Even if I didn't think that I had enough knowledge, even if I thought, I don't really know how to apply these chemistry equations, I would still go out and try that chemistry question because then I might realize that I knew more than I thought I did. This habit is fundamentally about getting over that fear of making mistakes. Instead of predicting what mistake you might make, go out there, do the thing, and learn from the mistake that you actually make while doing it. For me, this habit also extended to those longer term goals that always get put off to a long weekend or to the next holiday. I know that I'm not alone in having a lot of these tasks, like organizing my file system or brushing up on that topic that I know I'm weak at, but I always wanted to brush up on, or just building that vocabulary bank for English. I've definitely done this myself, and it's so easy to put these tasks off to a time in the future where you feel like you'll have more time to do these things. Through personal experience, what I realized was that even if I put off the task to a holiday or a long weekend, during those times, there would always be something else that was more important or more urgent for me to do during those times, and that meant that the tasks that were important to do but not that urgent kept getting pushed back further and further. By trying to be a habitual doer in everything that I did, I realized that this was much of the same problem. The perfect time to do my task would never arrive, and in reality, I had to just start now or as soon as possible because that would allow me to build the momentum that I needed to actually get started. By aiming to become a habitual doer, I realized that this was much of the same issue. There would never be a perfect time for me to organize all of those dirty files on my desk. I would just have to start, even if it was for 5 minutes, to put some of those things away to allow me to gain some momentum on the task. Just working on that stuff for 5 minutes meant that I was so much more likely to get it done because it was in my mind as a task I had started and it was something that I could finish. Aiming to always become a habitual doer meant that I started those English essays, I started the exams, and I made the mistakes and learned from them, and also meant that I was able to do those important but not urgent tasks even if I didn't really feel like it. The second habit that I got into was protecting my time. What protecting time means is blocking in your study for points of the day where you are most likely to follow through. I know students set a lot of really ambitious schedules and then rely on these to make sure that they're able to finish their work, and also get really sad and really disappointed if they're ever unable to follow these schedules. The problem is, and if you've ever tried putting a schedule through yourself, you might realize that some days you just can't follow your schedule for some reason, and as a result you feel really demotivated and disappointed in yourself at the end of the day. What I've realized is that the reason a lot of people struggle to follow their schedules is because they're not protecting their time correctly. For example, the person's school day might finish at 3:15 and then they know that they take 45 minutes to get home, so they get home at 4, and then on their schedule they've written that they're going to study for 2 hours from 4 to 6. In your head, this might seem perfectly fine, and the day before it might actually seem like something you're really excited to do, but then when you get there on the day and you're sitting at your desk at 4 p.m, you might realize that you're tired, you're hungry, and you can't feel like concentrating at all. The problem here is that this person scheduled a really important block of study into a time where it would be at very high risk. This example was actually me, and what I realized was that I could never study straight after coming home from school because I would just be too tired, exhausted, and hungry. Instead, what I did was I protected my time by making sure that I only studied after I had come home, had something to eat, and a shower. I know a lot of people who say they want to study in the mornings when they're not a morning person, or who say that they want to stay up late to study when they're not someone who usually stays up past 10. All of these examples are examples where people are forgetting to protect their time, and as a result, they might be studying really inefficiently, or they might be forcing their mind and body to study even though they really don't want to. This habit helped me become so much more focused when I was studying, and it also meant that I was able to separate out my study from my relaxation time so that I had a nice work-life balance. The third habit that ultimately helped me get into medical school was the 5-minute rule. If you haven't heard of the 5-minute rule already, it's the idea that if you ever see a task lying around that can be done in less than 5 minutes, you should do it straight away. The 5-minute tasks that pile up during the day, the things like putting your clothes away, ironing your clothes, doing the dishes, putting some paperwork away, are the things that end up causing so much mental clutter, stress, and just disorganization at the end of the day. It's often in the times where you're studying the hardest that it's most difficult to follow this rule. If you're studying really hard and you see something lying around, it's really easy to think, oh no, I'm focusing right now, I'm not gonna do that. But what I found was if I took that time to just do that thing, it meant that I wouldn't have to worry about it later, and it meant that at the end of the day, I was feeling a lot more calm and collected before I went to sleep. Once you get into the habit of always doing this, you'll never be distracted during your study session because you'll already have done that thing before you had even started. There are so many benefits to this habit, and it means that you have less things on your to-do list, less things that you're keeping track of in your mind, and less clutter both in your physical space and in your mental space to do better study. An underrated benefit of just doing those 5-minute tasks is that if you've done the 5-minute tasks, it allows you to build momentum and feel less bad if you aren't able to achieve all of your study goals. If at the end of the day, I hadn't necessarily achieved all of the study that I wanted to, I would still know that there wasn't dirty clothes lying around on my floor and there weren't dirty dishes in the sink, and as a result, it meant that it was one less mental burden for me to worry about. Ultimately, it was the combination of these 3 habits that I think helped me the most into getting into medical school. So I'd say seriously, pick one and try and apply it to your own life, and then try building up with the others.